well, we want to have some space for comments and questions or responses for our panel or just for each other in the room.
I think as a pastor, it's easy to forget how much our culture denies death. And there was a book I read in seminary law. It was published in the 70s called The Denial of Death. I think it's Ernest Becker, possibly. And we can get caught up in doing funerals and not reflecting on the impact it's having on us, because we're kind of in this culture that denies death. You know, it's been 3 days, get over it. And I think the power, Peter, of the companions is to have colleagues that you can take that pain to, so that the trauma isn't always carried home. And because, you know, trauma can be, you can take trauma to your kids without really knowing your spouse. If your spouse becomes the person that you're unburdening yourself with, then, you know, the trauma continues. And I just wanted to, when I think back to my ministry time, there was, I just forgot how our culture wants you to get over it and move on, you know, and no one wants to think about their own death and how that can impact your leadership and your relationship with your family.
Thanks, Tom. There's Larry.
Yeah, one thing I thought about from Genene's story, I read your book, by the way, is I used to tell people that the places they've had pain and struggle are the places they can help others. And that's really true for your life, isn't it?
It is.
My son almost died. My first son, when I was 29, he had paralyzed vocal cords and almost suffocated, ended up with a trach. It's a long story. And I went to a senior center and I did devotions and I told what was happening with my son. And immediately all these older women came up to me and told me their tragic stories of miscarriage, of birth deaths, of struggle. And so I just think, Genene, you're in the right place. You have experienced this pain. And what do people say? I want to talk to you because I've got that pain. You understand, right? Because you've had that. And now you'll understand me. And that's what I found in life. The places I've struggled, the places I've had pain, I mean, you can share as a pastor. Because people will then want to have a relationship about that. And so I appreciate your story and your lives.
Thank
Thank you.
Praise God for that. I give God the praise.
Anthony, did you have something, Anthony? Okay. Yeah, Mary.
I may be off base on this, but as I heard you two wonderful women witness, I couldn't help but wonder if the Black experience through generations has taught lamenting praise in a much more effective way than privileged white people. And we always blame it on, oh, we're Scandinavian or we're German. So I'll talk about those things. But I think part of it is that a lot of white people have been able to operate out of a privileged life. And so when things happen, the first reaction is difference. You know, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly or helpfully, but I couldn't help thinking about that. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And that comes out of the pain bringing you closer to faith, to lament and praise, which, of course, there's been so much.
I would definitely have to agree with you. If you go back to the slavery days, the hymns were our savior.
Yeah.
We would not have been able to endure the pain and torture that our people went through if it was not for the Negro anthems and the hymns that were our way to cry out to God. That was our lamenting, singing, the rhythms, drumming and things of that nature. It comes naturally because that was the way we spoke to our Heavenly Father.
Anything to add to?
I would agree. I would agree with that. And when we talk about the hymns or the spirituals, it goes even back further. There was a language that they spoke that was not privy to other people of a different origin. And only those who were in that particular group could identify and know what it was that they were saying. So I agree with that.
Yes.
Let me stand up so I can see.
Sure.
So I grew up, I'm a PK. So I was able to resonate with a lot of things that you were saying. So my daughter, she's 12, and we have service, every week. Growing up, I was not able to get involved in things until I was like a junior in high school. So when I became a junior, senior, I was involved in all type of extracurricular activities because I wasn't able to do it prior to that. And so now, I don't know, part of me feels like my daughter needs to be in church every Saturday, but at the same time, she's involved in chess on Saturdays. We have service on Saturdays. So I just want to make sure that she's 12, so she doesn't really have a choice. I mean, we're going to serve the Lord, she come to church. But I also want her to be able to enjoy life outside of church on church days. And sometimes I feel like, I don't know, should she be in church? Should she come to church all the time? Should there be a balance? Sometimes I'm just kind of torn in between. I just want to make sure that she doesn't resent being in church all the time when she gets to be of age. You know what I'm saying? So.
I mean, from my experience, I never resented being in, my dad definitely was like, we go on vacation, we're going to church, so.
Yeah.
I never missed a Sunday for 25 years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can actually, well, Jen can actually speak to some of this in a broader level of, there's research about, with recidivism and passing the faith on. Actually, research shows that if you do it in a loving and contextually appropriate way, actually making your kids go to church when they're children, they're more likely to stay in their faith in their 20s, 30s, and 40s because you're communicating that it actually is a priority and value to you. And if you're not communicating that, then they're like, well, why should I care if it's not a priority for them? So making a priority is a good thing. I think for me, and you mentioned this, Genene, about your kids, it's not that, I think for PKs, the resentment is not towards going to church, it's against church people and how they treat your family.
Right.
So that at least that's my experience. It's not resentment toward, I mean, speaking honestly, toward my parents, but towards the way that people treat them.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead? And
Let me just respond to the sister real quick. We were met with that a lot with my youngest daughter. So my older children didn't have an option, right? They were gonna come to church and do everything. But my youngest daughter, God anointed her to be a wonderful singer and actor and performer. So she would get opportunities to do other things during Sunday service. And it was a challenge. So what we decided to do, my husband and I, was to tell her the priority is always church. And if you can move something to the last portion of church, so you at least get the first part of church and then leave out. So what we would do is we would all go to church as a family, and if she needed to be somewhere at 11, she would stay until 10:30, then I would slide out, go drop her off, and come back and do whatever I needed to do. But they still went to church, right? So I think it's important that you have that conversation with your mate and make sure that it fits what you're trying to do. And it also depends what they're trying to do. Like if it's sports, that's good for their body, they need the physical activity. But if it's going to somebody's house party, that's a whole other issue. But as long as it's something healthy that can transfer into the church, then we definitely want to support that, right?
That's correct.
Yes, I can.
Oh, sorry, just let Sandra go and then, yeah.
Can I just say this, is that every situation is different. All kids are not the same, all adults are not the same. And so you have to deal with your situation with your child the way God directs you to deal with it. And so, because I had three kids, and we went to church. But there was also times when they had an opportunity to do certain things that they liked or wanted to do, and not go to church. And so you have to kind of look at your situation. It's not going to be the same as mine or someone else's. Kids are different. There are no two people the same, and you don't, so you have to be prayerful, just be prayerful about it. And you know what's good and what might not be so healthy. You and your mate make those decisions. And for the sake of and I know a lot of kids that went to church, they didn't, once they became an adult or went to college, they stopped. They don't, and today they don't go.
Right.
But I can say that my 3 daughters, today they go to church, and their children go to church. So it's all in, that's what it was.
John, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so one of the congregations I served, I had those people that would, call out my kids, call out my wife and all that stuff. And it got to the point that my wife and I decided that she was going to join another church. And so my wife and kids, especially my kids, they didn't experience being a PK in the same way, right? So they were at a church, and I knew the pastor there, it was great, and they grew up in a very different community where they weren't the PK, but people knew that their dad was a pastor. So that, I think, was really good for my situation, where they were able to grow up in a healthier environment. And they still go to church and are very active in the church. So.
Yeah. Thanks, John. And I think it's important to emphasize, CIM is not trying to be prescriptive, but descriptive, and sharing different perspectives and stories, and every situation is different too. Yes, okay.
I would like to know, I'd like to hear from pastors, how can the pastoral assistants and their congregation be supportive of you, and what are some of the things that they have done that you can share with the rest of us that we maybe can use to be of assistance or a greater support emotionally to the leadership? What is it that you need from us? And what are some of the things that have worked and have been used?
So as a current pastor, one of the things I do with my congregation and with my leaders is honestly share how I'm doing, and them loving me enough to let me be there, and not have to feel like I have to put on a front, praying for me, checking in on me, how are you?
Yes.
The anniversary of my mom died was a couple of months ago, and one of the leaders came up to me and said, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm praying for you today. I know it was a hard day." It didn't even dawn on me what day it was, because that's not where it was. I had to go home and ask my wife, "What was Katie talking about?" But just being present and recognizing and praying and encouraging, and getting text messages that, "Hey, Pastor, just want you to know I was praying for you today." Those kind of things are really, really helpful. And understanding when the pastor has an off day, because we do.
Yeah. It means a lot just to initiate, to show that because as pastors, you're always initiating. So for others to initiate, to show concern is really important. AR.
So, probably as one of the younger pastors in the room, what I tell the senior leadership that worship with me and the congregation, I've seen other pastors before get tired and weary. Growing up, even as a teen, always helping in ministry and things like that. One thing as pastors, being transparent. And one thing I tell them is, I will always tell you or show you, I tell them my warning signs or my behaviors. If I'm getting quiet or I'm very distant or things like that, there's something going on. And then sometimes I'll be like, I'll just need help, or I need this done. I'll verbally say it. And then they'll be like, well, Pastor, I'll jump in and help with this. Or is there something I can do with that? And that way, you'll find that you don't have to be in a position where you're giving direct orders and making people feel like they're doing duties and things, but it's servanthood altogether. And you're working the vision and everything together. And that way it's a healthy balance. And then in the community that you're building for the kingdom, you're looking at everyone's well-being as well. I'm like, okay, well, I noticed you've been doing this a lot. Is there something that I can assist you with? Or can someone else in the ministry help you with this area? Because burnout is real. Burnout is really real. I grew up in a church where I seen someone helping the ministry every day of the week. She fell out in the Sunday service. They stepped over her, filled her position, and kept going. And as a teenager, that irritated me. Like, oh, we're just a person. Like a number. Like at work. And work should be different than ministry. So the book of Acts teaches us how to have community, how to care for the widows, and things like that. A lot of times we pick and choose what we want to minister out of that text, but we don't care about the community as a whole. And that's where well-being is. We're caring for the full community.
And I think like also just kind of like to summarize some of that, that's really helpful that we've talked about in other conversations is just having, and also the Bloom book that we go through, having trained lay ministry leaders to handle crisis situations, which is one of the #1 things that keep you from going on your vacation. You know, having other people who can do funerals, having other people who can do visits, having other people, and also having a culture where the pastor isn't the only person to call if something is going on. But yeah, I know there was more, and I know we're kind of going over, so maybe just like a couple more comments and yeah.
I was just gonna say to that is that,
Okay.
attend as many trainings as you can. Sometimes pastors will, you know, make the congregation aware of different things that's happening, conferences or retreats or different things, because these things help facilitate the purpose and the mission that you are about in terms of what you've been called to do or assigned to do. So it helps you to become trained and prepared to meet some of the needs that's on a pastor's plate.
That's good.
I just want to ask that anyone who wants to support pastors to consider the things that you do during pastor appreciation should be done all year round. It's real simple, because a lot of these church members will work 6 months to prepare for that one day, Pastor Appreciation Day. But if you could just spread that around the whole year, it would be.
We don't have that in our tradition.
Cultural thing.
Yeah, but we don't get the kind of salaries. It bounces out.
We are appreciated in many ways. I remember someone saying, it's Pastor Appreciation Day, and I was like, what? It's just not part of our language or whatever. So,
But honestly, I really think that's important that everyone in the church understands that. And as a first lady turned pastor, some of the things that, for me as a first lady, helping with our children, knowing that we're running back and forth, why don't you say, sister, I got the kids today. Let me take them to home and you all stay for the meeting. I would leave church in the service, take my kids home and feed them and come back to the meeting and things like that. But one person could have taken them to McDonald's and while we're at the meeting. And simple things. It doesn't take a lot. And for the first ladies, we're doing everything that the congregation won't do for the pastor. So if he's assigned someone something to do, we don't want to see our husband stressing out. So we're picking up the pieces for all the people that were supposed to do whatever the assignment was. If they didn't show up that Sunday and they were supposed to lead worship, I was leading worship. If they were supposed to cook the meal for fellowship, I was cooking the meal for fellowship. So it doesn't take a lot for you to see what you can do to lift the burden.
Garrett,
Yeah, I don't want to,
I was never said, right?
If you have to leave, that's totally fine.
Yeah, so my mother's parents, you know, they're, so she got us here for long. My mother had a close, right? And I prepared the church. Eventually, she passed away. I think she continued on. So my mother passed away. Saturday, I was in church. Sunday, and I was in church. Do you know what congregated people do? Whenever they sit, then on Sunday, here, what happened? Issue. I'm like, I said, you heard my mother just passed?
Yeah.
Even to come to resolve conflict, you know. So, when it comes to assisting what we need as pastors, I think sometimes again, it comes to how we present ourselves. Sometimes I have this syndrome called the God syndrome. We present ourselves as we able to do all the things.
Come on now.
You know, I told my congregation that I'm a man of God. I'm not bored of men. You know, and I tell them I'm the under shepherd. Christ is the shepherd. I'm the under shepherd. So we need to let them know we need help. You know, I need help. Then when it comes to a mental health issue, I think there's a need for mental health issues. Especially within cultural context. In some culture, mental health is stigmatized. It's so stigmatized. I was thinking about my sister. She had a very bad marriage. She had all signs of mental health. I've been a doctor. I saw it. My mother and her husband felt like it was demonic. She needed to go to church to pray. Now, how can I tell them, look, this is mental health issue. I'm not saying that there's a place for prayer, but there's a place for mental health issue. And I want to tell my mother that my sister had a mental health issue. My mother almost killed me. She was not happy. You know, so it's one issue. And also, I also tell them women suffer in silence in our church. No, we don't know issues. Like when a woman hits 45, the issue of perimenopause and menopause. Most people don't know, even for husbands. Do you know the chemical imbalance? It's not that she want to be mean, but she's going through all different phases of life. She's going through withdrawal. Does the church know that? And so because the church does not know that, most women suffer silent in the church until when they get to the stage where they take their life, or they have issues and their marriage is breaking down. It's simply because it's an issue of chemical imbalance. She's going through menopause and perimenopause. These are emotions that she has no control over. How do we educate men to handle that in the church? So those are issues that I really think we need to raise in the church. We need to have a conversation about.
Yeah, my wife and I just started talking about that because she's been investigating that. And yeah, and women's health is a whole other issue. It's a whole conversation too. But well, I know we're kind of over time, but thank you so much for engaging in this conversation. This is the closing of the retreat. We'll have more coming that will send emails us out. But thank you, and God bless you, and have safe travels.